Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal-mursaleen. Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd, ikhwat al-Islami ibadallah. I'm currently in a hotel room. And as usual, when somebody is by themselves, you can become preoccupied with your own thoughts. And that is something that was occurring with myself a few minutes ago. And of course, sometimes my thoughts become preoccupied with the realities of da'wah and what's taking place as it relates to da'wah. And so, one of the things that I was thinking about was as relates to, I am not sure what that is hopping. That looks like a rabbit or something. Interesting. At any rate, one of the things that when dealing with da'wah, we look at, or I was contemplating from more than one angle. But one of the angles that my thoughts became preoccupied with are brothers who are upon the Sunnah, that are involved in da'wah, that are invited out to do A, B, C, or D with one of the well-known da'wah organizations here in the U.S. Now, first and foremost, these da'wah organizations, some of them raise a lot of money. You have some da'wah organizations that are so big that they raise around $5 million a year annually. And this money is used for the purpose of da'wah, or that is their mission statement. That is, the money is spent as pertains to da'wah. But when you look at some of the events that some of these larger organizations establish, that's supposed to be for the purpose of da'wah, and I'm not disputing that, but the reality is, some of these events, you'll find activities that are in conflict with al-Islam, meaning some of the activities that are found within the conventions and whatever else that they may be establishing, do you find prohibited matters being encouraged within these types of conventions and thus forth and so on. When you look at the people that run some of these organizations, it's clear that they are not people that have taken the time to go learn Islam. They may have people mixed in amongst them that study either traditionally in the masjid among scholars or at a university. But for the most part, the leadership of these types of organizations are professionals, engineers and people with maybe, for instance, law degrees, and other than that, they're professionals. They're not people that their focus of study was Islam. And as a result of this, unfortunately, the leaderships of some of these organizations, they think like politicians. They think like politicians. Now, what do I mean when I say they think like politicians? I'm pretty sure for some people it's quite obvious, but for those who may be scratching their head wondering, okay, what is al-Anjelesi talking about? Now, I'll be explicitly clear. A politician basically makes moves that are beneficial for him and his campaign or his agenda. In other words, he has an exploitative mindset. He goes in and he basically exploits. To exploit is to utilize something for the advantage of yourself or your agenda. That's what a politician does. Well, some of these organizations, some of the leadership, they have that same mindset. They make moves that are exploitative. I mean, they exploit, whatever they need to exploit in order to push forward whatever agenda that they may have for the organization, and thus forth and so on. Now, why am I saying this? Because I'm bringing it back to brothers upon the Sunnah who have sacrificed, who have went overseas and benefited, regardless if they went overseas and studied traditionally or they acquired a degree in an Islamic university somewhere. Usually organizations of this nature literally ignore brothers like this. They ignore people who went upon the path of seeking knowledge, benefited themselves in some way, then they come back and start to benefit the people. They generally ignore people like that, unless it's of some benefit for them. Unless it's of some benefit for them. A particular da'i becomes real popular, then to showcase or to have that person participate in a convention of theirs, that is of benefit for them. So a lot of times their participation or their allowance of someone to participate is based off an exploitative mindset. It's based off an exploitative mindset because they're getting something from that. Now, when this is something that I told more than one brother involved in dawah. Now you have some brothers that are upon the Sunnah involved in dawah that work with certain organizations, and if you question them as it relates to, well, what's the logic behind you doing A, B, C, D, and E, they're going to say that it's for a maslahah. A maslahah being an advantage or a benefit, overwhelming advantage and or benefit for the Muslim community. That's usually what they're going to tell you. Even though in some cases you can't see a well-defined maslahah that they claim is being achieved, and Allah knows best. But the main point is, because I'm not trying to dispute that would be something I would dispute with brothers who may state that. I would dispute that with them personally. But anyway, I remember having a conversation with a particular brother who was invited out by one of those organizations, and that was his premise. One of the things that brothers have to understand is that if they're coming to you requesting for you to be a part of something that they're doing, one, you've already broken a barrier. You've broken a barrier because they notice your work. Or I don't even want to say they notice your work. You've broken a barrier because now they see it as important, or not to use the word important, but they see it as, what's the word I'm looking for? They see the necessity of you being a part of their program. They see the necessity of you being a part of their program. And for that reason, that's why they're reaching out. So brothers have to understand this, especially because there was one particular organization. I saw them in some interview or some clip on YouTube, and they were saying, one of the representatives was saying something like, we've neglected the black community for so long, we want to change this, blah, 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 blah. And it was in a particular locality. So what they were basically saying is that they neglected the masajid within predominantly black areas. You know, they haven't supported them, helped them, assist them, and, you know, in their needs, basically. And they said that they were trying to make a change as it relates to that. Now, that was around the time, I know it was post-pandemic, but it was around the time when one of those situations had happened where, you know, it may not have been George Floyd, but it was one of those incidences that had happened. I don't recall which one at the moment as I'm expressing myself. So they were coming from that premise. And then they threw a conference or a convention, and they invited one of the brothers to speak at it that's known to be upon the Sunnah. And so in retrospect, when looking at how that took place and what has come after that, then one, they don't seem to be too truthful as it relates to what they said about no longer neglecting the masajid within the black community. Because I don't know of anything that they've been doing to improve them in that area. And then two, they dealt with the brother because of the exploitative mindset that I stated previously. They needed something from him. And he was able to facilitate what they needed from him. And so they're only reaching out to him, and Allah knows best. On the Zahir, it appears it was from an exploitative mindset. They needed this thing to be accomplished, but they knew they couldn't accomplish it without this person, due to that person putting himself in a position to where he was a means to facilitate that. And so there was no way that they could have been able to pull what they were trying to pull off without the assistance of that particular brother. And so the point that I'm making is that for brothers who are involved in dawah, attempting to call to the truth and guidance, and are in situations where more support is needed, more help is needed, and you have these types of organizations coming, offering you a paycheck or whatever the case may be, and then a person goes and does something claiming the maslahah, I'm trying to achieve a maslahah, I'm trying to reach more people, or whatever the claim may be, then I would say recognize the people that you're dealing with. These people are exploitative. So recognize the people that you're dealing with and leverage your worth with them. If they see you, if they see a need to be dealing with you in a particular issue or area, then leverage that like anybody would do when they're dealing with a politician that needs something from them. They leverage their power or leverage their resources in order to get something. Like, I'll give you an example. If an organization of this nature was to come to me and say, al-Anjelesi, we want you to be a part of this convention. This is just an example to give some clarity on what is meant by leverage your worth. Then for me, I would say to them, oh, you want me to speak at this convention or that convention? It looks like a big budget behind this convention, right? Find out what the budget is behind the convention, right? And say, okay, well, listen, you want me to speak at this convention, I'll do it with this one condition. My nonprofit organization doesn't have the same type of funding your organization has, but we'd like to start pulling off annual conferences or annual conventions as well. If you all agree to sponsor an annual conference that my organization does, then I agree to do the talk at your convention. And all they could do is say yes or no. The point that I'm making is, this is when you leverage your worth with them. This is just an example. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. But the point that I'm making is, if they would agree to that, because I would be requesting a convention that's totally controlled by my organization. You all just sponsor it, and perhaps we use some of your talent to help, pull it off. Because some of these conventions, they have, big massive camera crews, and, they really go all out. But as far as the convention goes, the theme of it, the flyers to it, the speakers at it, that will be controlled by my organization. You guys are just sponsoring it and bringing in the talent that you have from amongst you all to help bring it to fruition. So from the technical aspects of it. So this is an example what I mean of leveraging your worth with them. You have to keep in mind that they're thinking like politicians. They're being exploitative. They want something from you. So if you're going to deal with them claiming I'm achieving a maslahah by doing that, then I can't see that you're achieving a maslahah unless you're leveraging your worth to get something that's clear and tangible. As it relates to dawah, that really will further your dawah in the locality and or area you're in. Other than that, Allah knows best. There's a lot of people that are saying and doing things and then claiming there's a maslahah in it, and I really don't see it. And in some cases, people are hard pressed to articulate what that maslahah is. And when that happens, that's very bad. When that happens, that's very bad. So the point that I'm making, one, these people think like politicians. They're coming to you because they need something from you. So one, recognize that. Two, if you recognize that, then you have to deal with them like they're politicians. In other words, you guys want my vote? You guys want my community's vote? Then here are my and my community's demands. Here are my and my community's demands. We want that. We want that. We have these things are on the table. These things are a part of our agenda. So if you're not willing to fight for our agenda, you don't have our votes. That's how a person would leverage steps to response to a politician when they come to them because they need them for whatever, either for votes or for donations for their campaign. So when these types of people come, because it's clear they're exploitative, they have an exploitative mindset, and you want to achieve a maslahah. So articulate something to them, leverage your worth with them, and articulate your wants to them in exchange for participating in what they have or what they want you to participate in. Then you'll see a maslahah. We'll see the maslahah. People will see the maslahah. If they agree to it, then you achieve something. If they don't agree to it, then you say, okay, oh well. Oh well, do what you're gonna do. But the bottom line, we have to start thinking in those terms. We have to start thinking in those terms. And that's if we want to see things change, then we have to start thinking in those terms. If we want to start actually accomplishing things, then we have to start thinking in those terms. And Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala knows best. I don't want to be too long-winded with that point, but I just feel like or excuse me, I don't want to say I feel, but from what I'm observing as it relates to brothers involved in dawah, upon the Sunnah and upon the Athar, that some people are being are participating in, or excuse me, should I say, associating with certain organizations, and they're claiming a maslahah, and I'm just not seeing it, to be quite honest. And Allah knows best. Allah knows best. So I'm not the all knower of the seen and the unseen. So Allah knows best. But I, again, have that mindset. And with that, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.